Hey, Tolerators, happy holidays. I'm just here real quick to remind you that we are on our holiday break until January 2024. That means that all new content will be on our Patreon. There will be both free content and content that is behind our patron paywall. Our main focus on the Patreon this year will be our Misogynist of the Year award. We are going to look at some of the misdeeds of misogynist in 2023 and crown who was the biggest misogynist of the year. If you would like to vote for the Misogynist of the Year award, please make sure that you are following us on Patreon, whether it is for our free content or our paywall content, and sign up for our newsletter. Today on the feed, we have one of our Still Comfy episodes where we look at our favorite comfort movies with Julia Washington from Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous. Each Still Comfy episode has a video component of our live stream on our YouTube channel. There is a link in the show notes that will take you right to the Still Comfy playlist. Make sure that when we're back in January 2024, you are joining us live on YouTube every Tuesday where we can review some of our favorite movies. Happy holidays once again, and I'll see you soon.
Hi, friends. We are here. We are gathered here today to discuss the 1998 version of Parent Trap. I'm your co-host for the evening, Julia Washington. I host Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous, where we analyze pop culture through the lens of race or gender, and sometimes both. And I'm joined by...
I'm Natalie Katona. I'm the host and producer of the weekly podcast To All the Men I've Tolerated Before, your weekly look at everyday misogyny. I will be putting a reminder comment that we love comments in the comments so you can find my YouTube channel and leave comments.
Leave comments. And because we're using a third-party user, we don't know that you're here. So you have to comment to let us know that you are here if you'd like us to have you included in the conversation. Okay, we are here to talk about The Parent Trap 1998, starring Lindsay Lohan. You sent that in the private chat.
I wasn't going to call me on it, and then you did. I was already copying it.
I'm so sorry. I'm a horrible person.
You're rude.
I know. Let's do a summary of The Parent Trap 1998 because now I'm an asshole, so we have to segue. Twins Annie and Hallie are strangers until happenstance unites them. The preteen girls' divorced parents, Nick and Elizabeth, are living on opposite sides of the Atlantic, each with one child. After meeting at camp, American-raised Hallie and British-raised Annie engineer an identity swap, giving both the chance to spend time with the parent they've missed. If this scheme works, it might just make the family whole again.
Wow.
You know what I just realized when reading that summary? I wonder if twins could potentially still get away with like swapping because they had to use each other's passports.
Yeah, and I think, well, considering that it is just Lohan playing them both.
Yeah.
I'm convinced and I know I know identical twins, and there's always one tell. And if you know them well enough, you know the tell.
Yeah. Correct. 100%. Yes. Because even though they're identical, they're still a little different.
Okay,
so answer your question. Which twin are you?
Oh, I'm probably the bullshitty American one.
That's perfect because I'm definitely Annie.
Exactly. So I'm the and then like threatening you over a poker game and then getting all of my friends to hate you. And that's who I am.
Yeah. And then we just become best friends.
Yeah.
Okay.
If not sisters, if not twins.
If not sisters, if not twins. Yes, 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 yes. So this is a movie that I rewatch regularly, and I'd like to also acknowledge that it has been 25 years since this movie has released. So a lot has happened in those 25 years. But what remains true is how emotional I get during this movie.
Really? Which parts?
When both of them, when Hallie meets Elizabeth is her name, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
For the
Lizzie.
first time. Yeah, for the very first time. And she's just like, she says specifically something like, "You're here." And and she's just so happy and welcoming. And that's literally what you want, right? I don't know if that's what you want, but that's all I want. When I walk into a space where I know that people love me, is to feel loved.
Yeah.
And she is the embodiment of that. And poor Hallie has never felt that love. So then you see it for the first time and you're just like, this is a beautiful moment.
Yeah, I do love it. And, there's a really cute grandfather figure.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, are we going to talk about how really stupid this whole idea was to begin with? That, like, number one, I'm convinced Dennis Quaid came up with it. I was like, this is a white man's plan.
This is based on a book and which was adapted into a movie in 1961, which was then reimagined for 1998, right?
The only thing that I can remember from the 1961 movie is I can picture what the almost stepmom looks like exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it's because she looks so much like what the almost stepmom in The Sound of Music looks like. And then I know what the twins look like. And then I know the let's get together. Yeah.
That was an original song for that movie. Yeah. So Vicky in the original is Vicky in the new one playing Meredith's mom.
Oh.
It's the same actress. That's my favorite piece of trivia that I tell everybody. And I'm sure if anyone who is a regular listener of Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous has heard me say that pretty frequently. So I love that.
It was a book.
It was a book. Yeah. Oh, wait, no, that's right. Wait, hold on. I read Haley Mills's memoir, and then I also did a bunch of stuff for Freaky Friday, the original one. And now I might be conflating information.
I don't know. I've never seen Parent Trap on a book cover. Also, I don't care if if the original text says that it wasn't that man's idea to take two twins and be like, one's better than none, and split them up between an ocean. You can't convince me at all that it wasn't like, that is a man's plan through and through. Like, it's a mother.
Yes, it is a book written by Eric Kastner, published in 1949. So it was a man's idea.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I meant like in my head canon about like, okay, so you're about to get divorced and you're looking at these two infants and you're trying to figure out transcontinental custody arrangements. And then Joe Jonas looks at you and goes, I know, one is better than none. Let's split them. Mm-hmm. And number one, Sophie Turner would never. And to think that like he must have taken her to court or he must have done something, because I'm like, a mother would never be like, oh, never see one of my twins again? Sure. A woman would never. I was like, this is a man's plan through and through. He thinks he fixed something.
Yeah.
And that's my piece on it. Because I was like, because I get like real messed up with the Home Alone of it all, to be like, parents would never. This is neglect. Like, how? And then everyone's in on it. The grandfather's in on it. The butler's in on it. Chessie's in on it. And it's not like Dennis Quaid and Natasha Richardson, RIP, were exchanging letters or updates on the other twin.
Break. Yeah.
Because some nosy kid would have found something.
Yeah. If this were 2023, this movie could not truly exist in the way that it does. And I actually think, and even though I love this film, I actually think the 1961 version works better because you still have a level of anonymity. I can't say the
I'm
word.
not going to be able to say it. Pick a new word.
You still can live anonymously in a way that you can't. That didn't like, yeah, you can have an anonymous life in 1998. With that said, he has a wine label, so he's still like pretty well known, and she's pretty famous too, right? And like that's part of the end of the movie when they were not the middle of the movie. That's the climax of the movie when everything sort of starts to like come to realization. Like the 1961 version, it's like, oh shit, this is completely random happenstance. Like we could have gone on living forever and this would have never been an issue. But in the 1998 version, it's a miracle. It only happened when they were 11 and not sooner.
It's very sister, where they make it all the way to teens. And that was an adoption
TV show.
Mm-hmm. That was we happen to adopt twins and now they're at the same high school. More plausible in my head than a mother being like, sure, let's split the infants down the middle.
Right. Right. Which twin do you save?
Which twin gets to be British and which one gets to be an American asshole?
Go ahead.
Thank God that they both like lived pretty white privileged lives because, as you know, I'm a freeform slut. If you want to put a teen soap drama on Freeform, I'm going to eat it like it was my favorite ice cream. So I was obsessed to the point where I was convinced it was teaching me sign language, switched at birth on Freeform, where one of the children, due to poverty, healthcare, insurance issues, or whatever, ends up deaf. And one lives in poverty while the other one lives a very bougie white lady lifestyle in the good neighborhood. And I'm like, oh, it's like a grittier Parent Trap.
Yeah, it truly is. Okay. Can I switch us gears a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
So the opening is, they meet at camp.
Yeah. I love camp.
Camp Walden.
Yeah.
Camp Walden has Native American names for all of their housing.
Sure does. It's probably on indigenous land.
Because they're in Maine and there is a large indigenous population up there that sort of bleeds over America and Canada because we're obsessed with borders, even though they've been there since like the dawning of the ages.
And I'm also trying to remember if in the 90s and the 2000s, that was a really big thing that was happening in like the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts of our lives. As we know, I dropped out of Girl Scouts after 1 year. I found it insanely boring.
Yeah.
My sister had a completely different Girl Scout troop, got to ride horses, got to do overnights, got to see owls. Thrilling. My age group for Girl Scouts was like literally like gluing fake animal fur onto magnets. And I was like, oh my God.
I could do this at home by myself.
I could do this at home by myself. And my social battery is depleting. So I have no idea if it feels like every time we were outside in a group in the 90s or 2000s, we were somehow encroaching on indigenous land
and appropriating like customs in a way that's so watered down that when you know what I mean? It was just kind of like always like, hey, we're going to kind of do like indigenous things, but we're going to do the white version. But that's not how they called it. They're just like, look at us being cool.
I very much went to an elementary school where for Grandparents' Day in the fall, you did powwows for Thanksgiving. and the gym teacher pretended to be able to teach you a powwow routine. And then in the spring, for Mommies and Muffins Day or whatever the fuck it would be, square dancing, because they're equivalent in the Midwest. In the Midwest, they're like culture, powwows, square dancing.
The history behind square dancing, you can thank Henry Ford for, because he like got real insecure about like non-white people and things like seeping their way into culture. So he was like, you know how we can ensure good white values? Square dancing. And to this day, it's still required curriculum in physical education classes. So that's like the watered down version. It's like way more sinister than what I've offered, but that's your Reader's Digest version, I guess.
Also, do you want to know how much you don't want to be a third grader do-si-doing with another third grader, touching some gross boy from your computer class? You don't want to.
No.
And every field trip I went to, and I didn't know if this was just like a Midwest thing or if every state, because every state kicked out indigenous people, had this too. Every one of my outdoor field trips had like white people telling me about indigenous Native American culture and the tribes that lived on the land that we were standing on. But there would also be like a farm. It's like, so this is where the settlers lived. This is Bessie, the cow. And I'd be like, oh, the cow. And then they'd be like, try this maple syrup. We tapped it from the tree today. And then and that would be the only thing you got to eat that day. And I was a fat kid. And I was like, my blood sugar is crashing. And you just put a little bit of maple syrup on my finger and went, that'll do you until you're back on the bus.
Right.
And then we're tramping through the woods to the indigenous camp to be all like, and then this is where the indigenous people lived. And it's like a fire pit and like a patch of like a hammock type thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is a lot of white people teaching me about not white people.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because and we're not here to compare the original to the 1998 version. Just the original is seared into my brain because I'm convinced my mother wanted to be Haley Mills at some point in her life and have her career. We like even in the original, they're like there's a neighboring camp that's boys and it also has a native name to it, and you're just like, what is going on in the middle of the 20th century to late 20th century that we are so obsessed, but we don't acknowledge the horrors of any of it? You know what I mean?
Why are you acting like that doesn't happen in 2023? Look how white people love to chug a margarita during Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah, no, I know that's true because white people definitely invented Taco Tuesday. Like that is not a thing. Like
with white people tacos. Remember when TikTok was first brand new and they were like, and you'd like I love a white people taco because that's what me as a white person grew up with on Taco Tuesday, and be like, white people tacos, gotta get my shredded lettuce for my white people tacos. And so think of Cinco de Mayo. Think of, Juneteenth had 2 years of people not bringing just their whiteness to it. But if you don't think that that's coming,
it already is, because Walmart tried to do an ice cream for Juneteenth in a way that just felt really icky. I think it was Walmart.
No, was it Ben and Jerry's that has one too? Or are we okay?
Like Walmart, some, or maybe it's not specifically Walmart brand, but whoever found it was in Walmart. This ice cream company was literally trying to trademark Juneteenth for their ice cream. Like, it's egregious.
I feel like the child's version of Cinco de Mayo, because you can't slam a margarita for Cinco de Mayo as a 4th grader, is we will inappropriately teach you the Thanksgiving story and how pilgrims loved the Indians until they didn't.
Right. So yeah, so with like that opening scene with like Camp Walden, and then they're like, Allie James, you're in, I forget what the name was that that Janice rattled off. And I was just like, oh, this might be the only part of the movie that doesn't age well.
Also, I'm a fairly recent ex-teacher. We're still not teaching it right in schools.
Yeah.
I had a teacher aide who was a man of color, and here I am talking about butter and like fucking log cabins or whatever. And he goes, sis, you're not gonna tell them what the colonizers did after they made their butter. And I was like, we have to get through this one reader, and then maybe we could have story time about what truly happened
Right.
with the colonialists.
Right. Right. Right.
And I told you that horrific, I've told you so many horrific stories about white people in Indiana just being like, we should be able to just make jokes and stories and
Right.
mockeries of anything and everything that has to do with the fact that we're living on indigenous ground.
Right.
Take it all back. Take it from the white people.
Yeah. One of the things though during those when they were at camp that like made me cringe as a parent was when she's like, here's a needle, I'm gonna pierce your ears. And it was like a dull looking needle, and she just lights a match for like
just lit it on fire
3 seconds. It's like sterilized. And I was like,
shit like that happens at camp. Have you not been to summer camp?
No, I've never been to overnight camp. I've never been to sleepaway camp.
Oh.
I went to 6th grade camp because that was a school sanctioned thing. And then outside of that, because it was like you could go to Mexico on a missions trip, which is modern day colonization. So I wasn't gonna do that. But as you know, punk rock was my life for a very long time. So to see this, and so what I've seen people pierce their own ears with needles. They were sharp.
Yes.
This one was like, here's a metal rod I'm going to shove through your earlobe. And I just had this moment of like, oh, honey, you don't have anything sharper than that. But I guess you wouldn't, because
with
they're probably like, you can't bring sharp items to camp. I don't know.
Well, I think I've seen people do it with safety pins.
Yeah, that's how we did it.
And I think my memory filled in a safety pin for that. I thought it was a safety pin that she used for it. Clearly not now, but yeah, sleepaway camp, which I did at Gifted and Talented camp, where my parents used to go to college, because I don't know if we know this, but I'm very smart. That's the only reason I know what a tampon is. No one was going to tell me what a tampon was, but someone got their period during the school year, had their period at camp, and did a whole show and tell.
Was her name Margaret? Because that's how Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret ends.
No, she was one of, I do not remember her name. It may have been Gabby, but that could also be a woman I went to college with.
Yeah.
I do know that she was one of the few women of color in my like dorm for Gifted and Talented camp. And she did a whole ass show and tell. And no one was gonna do that for me.
Yeah. So I always felt like maybe I was missing out on a cultural experience by never going to sleepaway camp. I understand that.
Sleepaway camp is the fucking best. That's why I love murder mysteries, because the camp counselors threw us a dinner theater Clue-inspired murder mystery.
Oh, I love that. See, and now that I'm remembering it, my church, the junior high, did like a weekend retreat. It's not the same, because it's like we're gonna sing about how much we love God.
You know, I think it's very trendy that adults now have summer camps. There are like now adult summer camps. We can, everyone, our Venmos and all of the ways that you can support both of our shows, and Julia getting to go to summer camp, sleepaway camp for the very first time, are in all of our bios. Look at that. Julia's never been to summer camp.
Never.
That's rude. We can get her there. 2024, summer 2024, adult summer sleepaway camp. She can't go alone. She won't know how to do it. I have to go with her.
It's true. I do need a handler, because if it wasn't revolving around Jesus, I wasn't allowed to do it.
That's wild. That truly drives me wild.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, so I want to there's like so much I want to get into, Natalie, and I don't even know like where to begin. I do want to add another emotional thing that I had is when she comes home and meets the grandfather for the first time. That's one of my favorite scenes for a lot of reasons. And the main one is that is exactly how it's done in the 1961 version. And it's perfect because it still has the right modern vibe, but still feels nostalgic in a way that if you haven't seen the 61 version, you're still going to have all the feels and emotions. Even, I mean, down to the lines. Is that my girl? That tall, gangly thing? And then she's like, I'm making a memory. They change I think it's pipe tobacco in the 1998 version, and it's just straight tobacco in the 61 version. But like, to me, that scene is so beautiful.
It is so beautiful. And as you know, I have a prominent grandfather in my life, so I adopted other people's.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, you're my grandpa now. Good for you.
Yeah.
But I never got to like smell someone else's grandpa and make a memory, or really smell my own grandfather's.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just this tear jerky moment that I don't know, there's something about it. I also do want to say, I think that watching this movie on the heels of watching a Nora Ephron movie last week, and Nora Ephron is deemed like the queen of rom-coms, who like is a brilliant genius because she's been nominated so many times for her work and all these things. Nancy Meyers doesn't really get the same sort of clout that I think she deserves, because there are so many elements to Nancy Meyers movies that also kind of feel similar, not the same, but it's still very nostalgic for an old movies of old. There were so many scenes, like when Natasha, that's her real name. When Elizabeth
Lizzie
and Nick are in the basement, in the wine cellar, and he's like showing her, I have all the wine labels from that were served at our wedding. And you're just like, oh my God, that's so fucking romantic. But then she's like, I can't. And then backs up, and it's like a shadow on her face, and then it's illuminated across her. Like, that feels so old Hollywood. And there's so many moments like that, not just in this movie, but then in like almost every Nancy Meyers movie.
Hit me with some other Nancy Meyers movies.
Okay. It's Complicated, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend that one,
that movie.
because Alec Baldwin is Alec Baldwin.
I hated that movie. I very much did not like it.
Yeah, and I don't blame you. She did all of The Father of the Brides. She did The Holiday. She did Something's Gotta Give.
I don't think we have The Father of the Brides on our list. And how do we not?
She did Baby Boom. Well, she wrote Baby Boom. I don't know if in terms of directing. She did. Oh, Parent Trap looks like it was her first her directorial debut, if you will. And maybe that's why she doesn't get the same like sort of standing that Nora Ephron gets, because her directing debut came later, but she's been writing stuff since the 80s. She wrote Baby Boom, for Christ's sake, the Diane Keaton movie.
I don't think I've seen Baby Boom.
Oh, it's a great film. Great film.
I was thinking that watching this one after Freaky Friday made me realize that, to me, The Parent Trap is the standard for kids movies that also involve adults.
Yeah.
Or adult rom-coms that also involve kids.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why, in comparison, Freaky Friday feels so shallow, because Parent Trap lets you sit in the emotions, and it's not easy. It's not like, okay, Nick saw Lizzie and now they're in love. No, there's a whole other 45 minutes to the movie.
Right. And then the way that they present the backstory is it's really simple and quick, but you get just enough to understand that there's a whole lot of complicated mess within those 11 years after everything sort of fell apart. I do feel like there is you and I've talked about this, because I'm going towards Meredith Blake now.
I love Meredith Blake.
So I have a couple of different points. The first one being, you and I talk about this all the time. They sidestep, but also sort of minimally address the age gap.
Yeah.
She's 26.
15 years?
At minimum, because he's at least 40.
Oh.
So she's 26 between Nick and Meredith, and then it is 15 years between Haley and Annie and Meredith, because they're 11. They're going to be 12 and in the fall.
Oh, that's where I got 15.
Yeah. And they've only been dating for 8 weeks. Like, this is fast.
Well, and also, I don't think I realized as a child how much Chessie is on it. She's like, oh, yeah, this young floozy flies in from somewhere. She knows Facebook. She's going to put your dad on the social media map. And next thing I know, they're kissing and fucking. And now she's going to marry him after 8 weeks. And I was like, oh, no, that is gold digger behavior.
Yeah, so they really set her up to be, because, you know, the message is always, well, the younger women are always seducing the older men. Mm-hmm. So they really set that up in this film. She is absolutely set up as the predator in this scenario.
She is so sexually charged. The sexual charge of Meredith does not break until she has that one-on-one conversation with Hallie/Annie. Mm-hmm. Because up until then, every time you see Meredith, the music changes. Mm-hmm. There are close-ups on different parts of her body. She's in someone's lap.
Yeah.
And she is so sexually charged whenever she talks to Nick, because she's got a goal and she's going to get it. And I think that's what builds the stark contrast to be like, because, you know, I grew up with Jessica Rabbit. I was like, oh, sexy ladies are fun. Sexually charged ladies, that's who you want to be. But what makes your brain flip into, oh no, she's the villain mode, is because as soon as Nick isn't in the picture, she's so goddamn mean to those kids.
Right. And it very much is that, like, oh, women can't cohabitate, they can't coexist regardless of their age, because why are you trying to compete with an 11-year-old?
An 11-year-old.
Like, that makes no sense. That's gross.
Also, the way that Lindsay Lohan holds her own in those confrontations,
100%. Lindsay Lohan, the queen. I wish that she had had a different life, different parents, because she was so talented. I watched the behind, like, there is this, how Lindsay turns into Annie and whatever. It's a special feature that is on there.
Switches.
Yeah. And so, like, just watching her be interviewed and, like, the way she's talking in those interviews, she's very skilled. Like, she knows she's not a dummy dumb for being 11 or whatever. She's very intelligent for an 11-year-old, speaking about very technical things, right? Like, yeah. I couldn't have told you before I watched this anything about how they had to do the switcheroo. Like, I wouldn't have had the language at all.
When I was a child, I was very old before I realized that Lindsay Lohan was not a twin.
Yeah, a lot of people were very confused. Everyone thought it was actual twins and not a different girl. And they used a lot of blue screen, which I thought was really cool, because they walk you through it. So if anybody hasn't seen it, they really should just watch the extras. And it's like the bonus little bit about how they filmed it. And they had, like, I think he said they had like 10 stand-ins that were all the same height, same hair color, same age. And so they used a lot of stand-ins, and then they would blue screen a lot of stuff and then layer that over. And it's 1998 technology, but it's still really interesting.
Yeah.
Because for the time it was state of the art.
Well, and it doesn't look as cheesy as the now what we know Jurassic Park of our current age, the reboots of Jurassic Park and the reboots of Star Wars look like, when it just looks so overly done that you're like, this is too clean. It actually creeps me out.
Yeah. So that was my thoughts about a Meredith Blake. But then I also remembered that there is a theory going around social media. Have you heard it?
Oh, it's the Gaston, where it's like, well, if everyone would have just been nice to Meredith, or if Belle would have been nicer to Gaston, there'd be no villain in the story. And I think a lot of millennial women found themselves to be stepmoms, but we grew up with the evil stepmom trope. So now we have to, like, tear down, like, Cinderella and all these other little hoes that made it impossible to want to be a stepmom. Children can't be villains in their own abuse story. Like, she's so mean.
Yeah, because here's the thing, like, the idea of the twins being the real villain, I was thinking about it today when I was watching the movie, and I thought, if I'm 11 and I go away for 8 weeks And I come home and my dad's like, guess what? I'm changing your entire life. And you had nothing to do with the decision because you were gone and I made the decision for you. But also I missed you so much. Don't ever
So
leave
much.
me again.
So much.
Like, of course you're going to be a brat. Of course you're going to act out. Of course you're going to react to that. Because the sit down and let's have a conversation was, hey girl, I'm getting married to this person that you've realized could be your sister in age.
Yeah. Also,
not, hey, I've met someone, we've dated, let's all get to know each other and like see where it goes.
Also, like Meredith like only works in absolutes. Absolutes. There it is. So she's immediately like, I'm gonna have one conversation with this kid, and then this bitch better fucking back off. And she literally thinks that's how 11-year-olds work. And I'm like, no, 11-year-olds are petty. I've never actually let go of how petty I was at 11 years old. I'm still that petty. So of course they put a lizard in your hair. And of course they try to drown you in that lake. Like the rest of us could only dream of getting to do that. Yeah. And there was no like adult conversation between Nick and Meredith on how they were actually going to handle this. So in a way, Nick is also kind of the villain parent because it's like, so you just thought we'd bumble this and Chessie would take care of it. There's a lot of emotional baggage being handed to all of the women in this movie.
Right. Because he's the charming one. Because the way we meet Nick at the airport is very old Hollywood, very romanticized, very much like coming home, feel good. Look at this handsome guy who's a dedicated dad.
And no one, get me wrong, my only note about Nick in this on my entire page is Dennis Quaid is such a babe.
Yeah.
And he is.
He
and
really is.
Dennis Quaid was the babe of my childhood because of Parent Trap and my secret favorite movie, Dragonheart, where he has to share half a heart with a dragon. And the dragon, Sean Connery.
Oh, I love Sean Connery, R.I.P.
And I love it. And he's a babe and he's a knight of the old code and the old ways where knights and dragons were friends or whatever. And then they get to... I'm sorry, Dennis Quaid doesn't share half of a heart with the dragon and Dragonheart. I almost want to punch myself in my own face. The evil prince shares a heart with the dragon and Dragonheart. And because he corrupts the heart, and then they got to take care of him. Yeah. Dragonheart. It's a great film, everyone. Dennis Quaid, babe. Jerry Lee Lewis, babe.
Well, and when you see him and Lizzie later sort of connect, like he clearly still has feelings for her.
And always has.
And like, you know, he sees her in the lobby and he's like, holy shit. And then he gets himself freshened up to go look for her. Like, and not in like a creepy sort of way. It's in a, oh my gosh, like I need to look good. I'm gonna go find her. She looked beautiful. What is she doing here? Like, oh, like heart fluttery kind of way. And Meredith is just, in my mind, villain. She's like super. Let me just say this. It makes me really upset when people are like, I'm going to send those children off to Switzerland and so I can have the men to myself. Because in the scenario with the guy being the primary care provider, it's probably going to be easy, right? To convince them that that's what's best. But me as the mom, like you were saying earlier, my kid turned 18 and went off to college and I'm still kind of like, do you really have to leave my house?
Well, and Nick gives off really big, like, I don't even know what went wrong energy.
Right.
So it very much feels like, because Lizzie is like, he drives me crazy. And she's chain smoking and she has to have like 8 bottles of wine and a limo. And she's like, I cannot believe that I'm going to see him again. He infuriates me.
Yeah.
And then he's Mr. I don't even know what I did wrong. I'm adorable.
Yeah.
I'm a babe, if not a baby. And it's very much, and I've been talking about this a lot, where it's so infuriating the amount of mental and emotional labor women are handed, and then you're dealing with it day in, day out, trying to make it better, trying to convince yourself it's better, trying to raise him to be a man, even though...
Sorry, go ahead.
I don't even know where we got the notion that like men would rise to the occasion. We keep saying it's because of rom-coms, but they never seem to do it there either.
Right.
And he's just sitting there going, I don't even know why she left and took my baby. I don't even, Chessie, do you know? And they just get to play that off all the time.
Well, and it's like everything is cared for him so he can be the wine creative genius. Because why else would you have Chessie?
If he really... She was there from the jump.
Right, because Lizzie's like, oh, Chessie, of course I remember you. You're so great. You're amazing.
You're a nanny.
But like it's always a situation for him where he's been, I'm a genius and I'm a businessman, so I need to do these things, and so therefore you all must support me so I can focus on these things. And it's cute and great and wonderful and lovely that he has a relationship with Hallie, and that, you know, she adores her dad, you know, yay for you. But also how much of that relationship is just Disneyland dad, even though they live together, because Chessie's there doing all the hard work.
Well, and also he's like, Mr. like, I'm so talented. I'm a wine guy. I have this amazing business. But he's also like, but I'm not like a serious guy. I'm like a fun guy, and it's exhausting. It is exhausting being in a relationship with the guy who's always like, whoa, what are we screaming about?
Yeah.
I am the fun guy. Why are you throwing that at my head?
Yeah, weren't we having fun? If you're just joining us, we are talking about still the 1998 version Parent Trap, starring Lindsay Lohan, Natasha Richardson, and Dennis Quaid. And we are discussing the theory that the twins are the real villain.
But they can't be because they're children.
Yeah.
And it's not a scary movie. Like in scary movies, like children can be the villains. Like we've seen that happen.
Yeah, this isn't a horror film. This is like a legitimate family-friendly rom-com.
Yeah. And also and I think what also is happening with that like argument and that TikTok trend is, number one, Meredith Blake still hot. So she's on TikTok now with Chessie, and we're all like, "Whoo, she's still hot." And so we want to side with her, and she's like, "Maybe everyone should side with me." And good for her. Be relevant how you're relevant.
Yeah.
But also, I think what's happening is at the base of it, what we're really uncomfortable with is how Meredith was used as a sexual prop for conflict. And we don't have the language for that anymore. So we're like, justice for Meredith. Those kids put her in a lake.
Yeah.
They do real extreme shit to her. They put her in a lake.
Yeah. They do.
She could have drowned.
Trying to think of what happens to her in the original. I think it's just, in the original, they do all the things to her tent that it happens, you know, in the first, when they're at camp. And then there's little tiny bear cubs that sneak in and are like licking the honey off of her face and her body.
Were they brown bears or black bears?
They were brown.
Brown, you got to lay down. Black, you attack back. Those are the rules for the bears.
But also baby cubs mean there's a mama somewhere.
There's a mama and she's mad.
So I was like, so I feel like that's a decent edit, right? Like I felt like that was a good edit, because in 1961, I guess you could have bears as props for movie, like live actual bears.
In 1961, you could have bears in your movies, and you could have lions in your bedroom. It was a wild time.
The wild time.
It was a wild
And then the guy in the 61 version, because in the 61 version he has a housekeeper and he also has like a ranch hand, because he's not a vintner, he's a ranch guy. And he's like, they ain't nothing but little biddly old bear cubs, and you're just like, oh, bear cubs that could murder you.
Which, by the way, I'm always the person who's like, why are you so scared of the little teddy bear? Brown, lay down. Black, scream back. That's what you do with bears. There's a rhyme.
I'm like, how do I learn how to climb a tree real quick?
Why are you so scared? Hug the little babies. They're just
Oh my
they're just little
gosh.
guys. I was recently at the zoo, and every animal enclosure we came to, my friend and I would look at one another and go, I just want to give it little scritches. Just a little scritch. Just a little behind the ear scritch.
My God, Natalie, please don't get accidentally murdered by a wild creature.
I am very surprised that I have not been one of those people to like lose a limb at the zoo because they were doing like white people nonsense.
Yeah. Don't do that. Don't do that. But yeah, so that was kind of like my big thing was like Meredith was very much painted to be a seductress, younger woman who bewitches the doofus kind of middle-aged wealthy man. And I think that's where I'm like, justice for Meredith, not in the whole like Meredith. She wasn't, not that she wasn't a villain. It's just like, can we stop painting women as like,
she's not bad. She was just written that way.
Yeah.
I love Jessica Rabbit is basically what I'm saying.
Do we need to cover Roger Rabbit on the show?
I love Roger Rabbit, and I probably have like a large portion of it, or at least Jessica's lines memorized.
I still don't know who framed him. I've seen that movie a billion times.
Roger Rabbit and Muppets Take Manhattan. When people ask me what my Easter traditions are, I'm like, oh, watching Muppets Take Manhattan and Roger Rabbit. And they're like, not an Easter tradition. I used to show it in my Catholic classroom. I'd be like, good news, everyone.
Yeah.
Can't show Roger Rabbit at school. There's some wild shit that happens there. But like, good news, everyone. Easter break's on its way. So I thought we'd watch the best Easter movie of all, Muppets Take Manhattan.
Yeah. Oh, that's cute.
Yeah.
I love that.
Do we think that Hollywood made Lindsay Lohan bleach her freckles? I was shocked by how many freckles were on her face.
No, because in her Vanity Fair cover, she still had a shit ton of freckles.
Good for her.
And
they're adorable.
I think it's a matter of, just covering them up with makeup and stuff, because it is really hard. And it is shocking when somebody has a ton of freckles and then they put on foundation. You're like, what's different about your face?
Yeah. God, the acting chops of that child at 11 just to have the career that she had.
I know. She's so talented.
And it's the same with Amanda Bynes. It's the same with Hilary Duff. These really young women of the 90s and the 2000s were very talented, and they could hold their own in scenes with grown-ups. They just happen to be young women in Hollywood, and therefore we refuse to let them have the career that they deserved.
Well, and I think too, a lot of that also is, the parental role, because Hilary Duff, I feel like, came out of it unscathed. Out of the three that you listed, and so like when you think about all of our young starlets who kind of came out of it okay, they had a pretty solid like parental support system.
Yeah.
Okay, so can I tell you something else that I love about the 1998 version?
Of course.
All of the nods to the 1961 version. It makes me so happy.
That's what reboots are supposed to do. It's supposed to make me feel warm and fuzzy.
Yeah, but I mean, like, they take things, like, they pull things directly. Like I mentioned before, the scene where she's like, Grandpa, and that is that my Annie, that tall, gangly thing. The snapping of the sticks because the bears, to keep the bears away, like that. I love that. There's other little scenes too, like the way that they redid the scene where Chessie's telling Hallie about her dad being engaged. Verbena in the movie is like, I'm not gonna say a word, not one single word, and then goes into like the gossip of it all. And they do that same thing, but in a 1998 version, and it's so beautifully done. Like, this is such a wonderful example of how you do a reboot of a movie that still makes you feel all the things the 61 version did, but for a modern version. Like, it's such a wonderful nod to the original in but keeping it relevant and modern. Like these two movies stand alone to me. Like they are two different movies completely because the acting is different, the vibe's a little different, but yet they still could be their own family, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
They're their own
it's
family.
like when people,
it's like big sister, little sister.
It's like when people make fun of me because I went and saw the last Jurassic Park and they're like, but you hate Chris Pratt. And I was like, but the original 3 are coming back and they're so fucking hot.
Yeah.
Like, they're so fucking hot. And they're going to play all of the music cues that like makes my brain tingle. And I like dinosaurs.
Yeah.
And I like to hump my chair whenever Jeff Goldblum's around. Look, he's right here.
Oh, sexy Jeff Goldblum. Hey, sexy Jeff Goldblum.
Hey, sexy Jeff Goldblum.
God, I still can't get over that Gina Davis full on said, "This is my soulmate."
He's my soulmate too. So like maybe Gina, Jeff, and I need to talk. Oh, spicy.
Spicy.
Also, along that same note, I found the very beginning of the movie, all of the camp scenes, very kind of queer coded. And I was like, what's happening? I was like, is it because all girls camp is innately queer? Or is it because I'm like, oh no, they're coding Haley that way as a way to like differentiate herself from Annie?
You know, it's interesting because when I first saw the movie, I just was like, man, all female spaces, that sounds amazing. Like, look at everyone getting along and having a good time and, you know, having this great relationship. Because again, I grew up in religion and it just didn't have the same collective vibe of unity as religion likes to say that they do.
Well, and you know, in every Disney movie, they have some sort of queer coded character, and it's usually a villain, which is Disney's fuckery. But yeah, I was just like watching it. I was like, oh, that's the first time that's hit different. And
yeah,
then
that's interesting. Yeah.
I was like, damn, if it wasn't for Christianity and just like uppity conservative white people, I would have came to terms with bisexuality way earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. Like I had somebody I was having a conversation with, doesn't matter who, had made a comment about like all these people and they're who are old, who are coming out now. What is that? It's so trendy, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, let's talk about the 70s.
I
wasn't there, but I can read history books and I watched a lot of television that was from the 70s and the way that they talk about people who are gay.
This is dangerous because I'm on live internet, but I was explaining to one of our mutual friends because they had mentioned the Gaylors on one of their publications. And I was like, oh, ho, ho, ho. But have you ran into the Hetlers who are so proud of their heterosexuality that they literally scream, why doesn't she have the right to be straight? And everyone's trying to make everyone gay. And then they hashtag Hetler all over it. And it's very unfortunate.
That was a thing.
Yes.
Dang.
You need to be in the comments more in the conspiracy theory TikToks. You need to be in the comments more.
No,
it is. It's like
I'm
very
too
clownish.
susceptible.
Because as you know, like it's very clownish and comical on both sides, but it's extremely like satirical and comical on that side because they're like just mad that maybe another person would be gay.
Yeah.
And that's what they're screaming about. And the rest of us are just like picking up on things. We're like, there's just a vibe.
That's so funny. I think it's funny when people are mad.
Yeah.
About like, why is that like who like I'm here to tell you that I'm pretty confident it was like the 20th century who's like angry about it. Cause I feel like well, again, you know what? I'm not going to make a comment because I grew up in a Christian church. So all of my information, all of my learning was self-learned about things like science and history.
And I think that part of it plays into the beginning of this movie. I mean, just like getting a vibe that I've never gotten a vibe before it made me realize how far I've come in my deprogramming of not only misogyny and male patriarchy, but also heteronormativity.
Right.
Because when people scream, you shouldn't just assume someone's gay. It's like, but then you're also just telling me that I should assume that the world is straight, and that is
Right.
the majority.
Which I do hate that. I hate that we should just assume everyone's straight. Like
Right.
that's
And
gross.
so when I start to read vibes, I'm like, oh yes, because my brain didn't immediately go, that's a girl that kisses boys and only boys.
Mm-hmm. And I wonder too, because Nancy Meyers is the director. She is a co-writer on this film. So again, at the hands of a woman director, someone who's looking at camp through the lens of what would she want her daughters to attend.
Mm-hmm.
Goes back to your theory of like, pretty sure everyone's queer until they're not.
Until they're not, until someone smacks you about it or something,
Yeah.
until someone says something really mean to you in a hotel lobby.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I do think like that is something about being young that we take it for granted, and it's like it's the same argument for why babies can see ghosts, and it's because their brain hasn't shut off to the ghost yet. So at some point through everyone's canon, there is a canon event where where a lot of people went, oh, you have to be straight. Straight is safe. Everyone is straight. It's a very straight world. And for some people, it didn't happen and they didn't have to deprogram, or it did happen and they deprogrammed earlier. But it is really nice to kind of just like walk through the world being like, I don't know, maybe I could kiss anybody. Maybe my hot tub at the Bachelor would just like look like a little potpourri party. It could be anybody.
It could be anybody.
This is me demanding gay Love is Blind. If we can do gay ultimatum, we can do gay Love is Blind. I deserve gay Love is Blind.
Everybody does, because straight ultimatum was boring.
Straight ultimatum was so boring. This season of Love is Blind, very messy. I'm in love with it. But that ultimatum season 2 with the straights, how dare you air that?
It was not great. It was not great.
Where were the producers making drama? No one was talking to these boring people.
I don't know.
Where was the manipulation? Where was the gaslighting? We all watched unscripted on Lifetime.
Right? Okay, so that brings us to our final. Now we're coming to a close on our hour. And I need to know, Natalie, are you still comfy with Parent Trap?
100%. Number one, like, hey, Dennis Quaid, hey, I know that I said that you were the problem in the whole like switcheroo scenario, but you're adorable and you're a babe. And you're the reason why I listen to Jerry Lee Lewis's music, even though I had to watch you hit Winona Ryder.
Yeah, 14-year-old Winona. 14-year-old Winona, or her character was 14.
And it's literally seared in my brain, you shaking her while she's in her like nightgown. So anyways, I love you, Dennis Quaid. Always will. And also like, I do think it is the fact that Natasha Richardson was so beautiful and so talented, and from like literally anything I've ever seen of her, so kind. And for us to lose her tragically due to a skiing accident, I vow to never ski, because that's how we lost Natasha Richardson. And so you can't make me. It is my platform. I vow to never step on skis, because why would I? In honor of Liam Neeson.
I think I said this in one of our group chats, that whenever one of her sons has reportedly said that whenever he's really missing her a lot, he watches Parent Trap, because that's the most like her in real life.
She's so beautifully empathetic in this movie. She's just like beautiful. And like her mannerisms, the way she talks to the girls, even when she finds out about the switch, like you can just tell there was never a mean bone to her. So Natasha, you're missed. And Dennis, you're still a babe. So good for the two of you.
Well done.
Well done. And Chessie and Meredith, Love what you two got going on.
Besties in real life.
Besties in real life.
Here for it. Here for it. I also am very comfy still with this movie and will continue to watch it. It is one that I really do enjoy watching in the spring and summer for obvious reasons because it's summer camp. But it makes me feel like if I didn't have such a heavy-handed religious growing up experience, that this could have been not like the switcheroo part, but like going to sleepaway camp and just like having pals.
Jules, you have pals.
I know I do, but like when it's just I'm currently reckoning with all of the religious stuff in my life, clearly, as you can tell. And I just spent the weekend. I did just spend the weekend with my two best friends from high school that we've known, and we've all known each other since technically junior high. So like, yes, but like there's.
But you never went to camp with those ladies, so it doesn't even count.
Right? Exactly. We've never been to camp together. We've never done anything sleepaway at all.
We never rode our bikes to the next town over and ran into a grifter on the street.
No, but we did walk a lot to the AM PM, which is now at Starbucks.
Oh, that beautiful Christina Milian song. Somebody hit the lights so we can rock it day and night. I think every time I see an AM PM, which doesn't happen often in the Midwest, but should I be traveling and I see an AM PM, I'm always like, from AM to PM. I remember you, Christina Milian.
Yeah. But yeah, it just makes me like kind of nostalgic in a way of like, that would have been nice to have had a like that, and not in like a bitter way, in like this is a nice little dreamland I can escape to from time to time.
No, I had wild summers. I had wild unsupervised summers. I had 2 summers in camp. Camp's expensive now, so I would like to remind everyone that Jules has never been to sleepaway camp. She's never been to summer camp, and she has no friends. You just heard her say it. And our Venmos and all of the ways to support our show and to make sure that our shows make money are in our links in our bios. And and if every person who runs into this donates $1, Jules and I may get to go to sleepaway camp, and Jules could maybe make her first friend. Who's in your house? No one's supposed to be in your house.
I don't know.
Okay, great. Ghosts.
I don't know if it's Josephine or if someone's stopping by.
Well, here's Penelope. You want to come here at the tail end?
I'm just going to assume it was Josephine.
It was probably the dog.
She has a collar that doesn't make, like, tags that don't make noise because I can't stand the sound of it hitting the bowl.
Look right into TikTok's eyes, Penelope.
I love that you clocked. She was like, hey, TikTok.
What up, TikTok?
Also, I appreciate that you clocked that I thought for a moment I wasn't alone in my house.
Here I am doing my little commercial. And I look over at you and you're just like, I was like, who the fuck's in your house? We always thought it would be me murdered live on the internet, and here we are.
We are. Natalie, why don't you tell our friends what's coming up for you this week and where they can find you and support you?
Hey everyone, it's the last week of the month, which means that in order to get a full episode of To All the Men I've tolerated, you've tolerated, we've tolerated, before you have to join the Patreon. Good news. You could have a 7-day free trial for all of our tiers and binge all of the bonus episodes. The one that we release in September is a doozy. It is about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard all over again. So the preview that's going to air on Thursday during our normal slotted time is last month's Patreon episode, which was Jules and I trying to pretend like we did things this year that affected our goals and make ourselves feel better. You can find me at Men I've Tolerated Pod on Instagram. You can find me on TikTok at NatalieK124. Some other quick and easy ways to support the podcast is to sign up for our newsletter, because it will have a merch code for our Halloween merch that I've been told is pretty cute this year. It's pretty cute this year.
Cute.
But you got to get the newsletter to get the code.
Yeah.
I didn't know if YouTube was going to be mad because TikTok could see Penelope, but they couldn't. But look, she's right here. She's going to kill me.
She's like, why'd you pick me up this
Why
way?
did you pick me up?
Friends, I also have a Patreon bonus episode going out this week. So if you want the full episode, join us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Julia Washington. You can sign up for my newsletter. You can join all the fun. We recently dropped a book review about the book Did You Hear About Kitty Carr? That is a Patreon only book review that you can find there. We are moving a lot of free content to Patreon because as we're learning, if Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk ever get into that cage, we will no longer have social media.
AI, baby.
So find me over on patreon.com/Julia Washington. You can be in a paid tier or you can be a part of the free community. Either way, you will get the same great content that is dropping on social media, but you will get it on Patreon first.
And remember out there, kids, high five a writer. We've reached a tentative deal. Watch the Lindsay Lohan Christmas movie from last year. It was adorable, and we should support her getting her career back. Don't follow Britney Spears' advice. Stay away from knives, but most importantly, stay cozy, stay comfy, and send Julia to summer camp.
Bye, friends.
We'll see you next time for Armageddon on my channel.
I forgot to plug that too. Next week, Armageddon on the Men I've Tolerated Pods YouTube channel. Find us there or be square.